Matthew Vaughn is a director who has a unique style and always brings a fresh take on his genres. So today, let's rank all of his films from worst to best, including his newest one, Argylle. Hey everybody, my name's Justin here. I try to watch everything that hits theaters and on streaming services. If you guys are like me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell notification for more up and coming content. Leave your list down below. How would you rank all 8 of his films, from his first film, Layer Cake, to his newest one, Argylle? Coming in last place is The Kingsman. I just recently saw this movie for the first time, and I was expecting a film that felt very similar to the first 2 Kingsman movies. This one explored the origins of the Kingsmen, and while that story is worth watching, it feels very different compared to those first films. Those first 2 films, they had a style that worked for it. It was over the top, it was cheesy, it was a blast. This is a little more serious. It tries to balance these different tones of exploring the origins of the Kingsmen and then also trying to be action-packed, and a little bit of comedy thrown into it. It just does not work for the style that Matthew Vaughn had set up with the previous 2 films. I do like the movie, the action's fun, the characters are interesting within itself, but it doesn't have that one scene that stands out from the other 2 Kingsman movies. It doesn't have that sense of style that is zany and violent as can be. It's just kind of there and generic at times. I do like exploring the history of the Kingsmen and some nods to those first 2 movies, but as a separate film, it's very different from the first 2, and the style is just lacking with it. Number 7, Layer Cake. This was Matthew Vaughn's directorial debut. It had a really good cast, a lot of actors within this film that are very popular now. We have Daniel Craig before James Bond. We also had Tom Hardy and Sienna Miller. There's some really good performances in here. It moves a little bit slow. It doesn't have that style that Matthew Vaughn is known for now. It feels more of like a Guy Ritchie movie, and that's not a bad thing. I think all of the characters come together to tell a really interesting story. It's where we get to the middle half of the movie where Daniel Craig's character has to break his rules. The movie drags a little bit in the middle half of the film. It's got a decent setup in the beginning of Daniel Craig's character and his kind of routines, and then exploring how he has to break that in the middle half. It kind of falls apart, like it doesn't know where to go with this movie. And the action's good. There's not many like big surprises. It feels kind of generic at times, but for a directorial debut, it's a solid film with a great cast behind it, and laid the foundation for a lot of actors and Matthew Vaughn's style as well. Coming in at number 6 is Stardust. Stardust was a huge surprise. I just recently watched this film for the first time. I didn't watch it as a teenager because it felt like a corny fantasy film, but watching it now, it feels very reminiscent of The Princess Bride, which I absolutely love. And so there's a lot of similarities between this movie and that movie. I love the world building in here. We have Charlie Cox in here who discovers this star. He teams up with her, but he has his own little agenda of wanting to marry somebody, but there's that relationship that develops. All of the big villains in here, from Mark Strong and Michelle Pfeiffer, people who have worked with them after this movie. But those villains in here and just the world building itself, it kind of feels a little bit over the top and cheesy at times, but it really matches the energy of this fantasy film. We get Robert De Niro, who was a huge surprise within this movie. It's very different from his other films. After Stardust, he stuck to some kind of genres with Kickass and XMen, then the spy movies with Kingsman and Argylle. But Stardust is so different from his other films, but I appreciated its uniqueness to it, and the style and the characters and just that overall romantic feel throughout. There's a lot of things that just work for this movie. I was really surprised with this movie. Number 5, Kingsman, The Golden Circle. I know a lot of people have this film kind of towards the bottom of their list, and it isn't as entertaining as the first Kingsman film. This one feels a little more ambitious. It takes on a lot. The runtime's a little bit longer, And it has so many different ideas that this film is trying to juggle. You have the Kingsmen, and you also have the Statesmen. And you had the big villain of Julianne Moore in here, and Elton John, which was just entertaining as can be. But this film just takes on a little too much, and it feels very chaotic at times when you're trying to develop the Kingsmen and bringing back Colin Firth's character as well, and introducing the Statesmen with Channing Tatum as well. There's just so much going on. You can feel that ambition within this film, but the story for a lot of it feels either thin or it's not explored to where there's enough development for the story. The action's still a lot of fun. The characters are still very likable. It's just that it takes on a little too much, where the first Kingsman film, for what it did offer, kind of felt grounded for the development of Eggsy. And this time around, he's got to do more, but it just takes on a lot to where the story, it feels chaotic, and you just can't really kind of latch on to one singular story because there's so much going on. There's a lot of things that I like about it. Julianne Moore is way over the top. I like Elton John in here. And even Pedro Pascal was a huge surprise in this film. Coming at number 4 is Argylle, his most recent film. This one was unique as well. I like the structure behind it and how we saw Bryce Dallas Howard's character writing these stories and how it kind of played out into the film. We saw that she had writer's block and wanting to change ideas as well. That all played nicely within this film. The problem with it is that it takes on so many twists and turns at the end, which some of them I didn't see coming. But you have so much exposition dump on the characters and how you have to explain their past and where they are now and who they actually were. So many things that happen that some of these twists, if you got rid of them, it would have been a more coherent ending and a very strong ending as well. But so many times they were like, okay, we need to do something different with this character, and this character needs to go off in this direction as well. And just did not work later, like the last 20 minutes of the movie. But I like the characters in here. Sam Rockwell, entertaining as can be. He always delivers. I liked Henry Cavill for his limited role. I like seeing Dua Lipa in here as well. Bryce Dallas Howard was really good in her role. And just the overall cast that he brings in here. Some people he has worked with before. But it's very entertaining. It's cheesy as can be, but it works for this movie. He's taken on this spy genre, tried to do unique things with it. And sometimes these storylines just don't work, but for the most part, it is a fun film. It's a little bit long, but it is what I would like to watch again and again. Coming in third place is X-Men First Class. I love that this was a different direction to the previous X-Men movies. This was a film that added more depth to Professor X and Magneto, seeing their younger selves and exploring the origins of Charles Xavier's school and seeing a different style to it. It felt grounded, and seeing James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender in their roles, it totally worked. And I saw that friendship that they had, and it added so much more depth to that relationship and that conflict that they eventually have in the later films. The action is fun. The characters, these are characters that I love prior, so going into it, I wanted to know more about them, exploring more of their origins, and it's done it nicely within this film. It doesn't feel like a cheesy X-Men movie. It feels more of a grounded approach and just kind of building off of the relationships that are set forth in future films. It's done nicely within this movie. So Matthew Vaughn, I love that he took the X-Men films, brought some fresh air into it and a fun approach to it as well. Likable characters, a fun story that set forward a really good time for X-Men in future films. Coming in second place is Kickass. I love the hyper violent scenes within here, and Aaron Taylor Johnson is a character that is so determined. He wants to do good in his city. He wants to protect people, but also wants to impress girls in high school as well. So he takes on this role of Kickass. It's corny, it's fun, it's violent. I like the character. Nicolas Cage is awesome in here. Kickass just balanced so much that you had this heart to it, a character that you wanted to see develop and care for as well. And then you got some fun villains, way over the top sequences with Mark Strong, but the action is intense. It's got that classic superhero vibe to it, but done in such a different way. Like when you see these films that Matthew Vaughn has taken on, XMen and Kickass and Kingsman, he's taken genres that have felt generic for many years and has done unique things with them. But coming in first place, Kingsman Secret Service. This felt like a James Bond film. One of the huge reasons why I love this movie. Taron Egerton is perfect within this film. He's cocky, but also very confident within himself, just exploring the Kingsmen and their the way of running their secret service works as well. It's got this unique style to it that Matthew Vaughn really taps into within this film. I love the adventures that Eggsy goes on, him exploring more about himself and protecting others around him, the challenges he goes through. You got some heart to it as well. This was just an all-around really entertaining film with a very, very memorable scene with Colin Firth and the church. That was a blast, really utilizing a soundtrack to really amplify these scenes. Samuel L. Jackson as our villain, who doesn't want to see any blood, is very unique for a villain. And so there's so many cool things about these characters, just little personality moments that really shine and make these characters very memorable. I love Kingsman Secret Service, and it is easily for me the best Matthew Vaughn film, but he has directed a lot of entertaining movies and has a unique style that works for these films. So thank you guys for checking out my ranking video of all 8 Matthew Vaughn films. Leave your list down below and stay tuned for more up and coming ranking videos like this. My name is Justin Watches Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.